Back in 2020, Simon Cowell crashed off an electric bike. His spine got wrecked with multiple fractures. Paramedics said, straight up, he was crazy lucky to even be alive. Then 2 years later, boom, he fell again. Same kind of accident, same brutal hit. But honestly, there's something way harsher than those crashes. Something the cameras never showed. Because the guy who discovered Kelly Clarkson, One Direction, and Susan Boyle, the mogul who built a $600 million empire, the man deciding who got fame and who got sent packing, that guy paid a price no amount of money can ever fix. A childhood starving for love. A bankruptcy that forced him back into his teenage bedroom. A scandal that broke friendships. The loss of people he cared about, including a young star he saw like a son. And a fight with his own reflection that left him unrecognizable, even to himself. Today, at 65, Simon Cowell isn't that savage, ruthless judge anymore. He moves carefully now, protecting a spine held together with steel rods. His tired eyes struggle to focus. And he hugs his son Eric tighter than most dads ever do, terrified that time might be slipping away. So how did the invisible kid nobody loved become the most powerful man on television? What really went down behind the scenes of American Idol, The X Factor, and Got Talent that nobody ever saw? Why did he betray a close friend? And how did 2 near-fatal accidents and Liam Payne's death completely change who he is? Before we get into that, we gotta rewind. Back to a boy crying alone in bathrooms. A guy who went broke at 30, and someone who learned the hard way that no fame, no fortune, no power can protect you from life's cruelest truths. Simon Cowell's first stage wasn't lit with spotlights or filled with applause. It was cold, silent, and empty. Born on October 7, 1959 in Lambeth, London, he stepped into a world that looked perfect on the outside but felt hollow on the inside. His family wasn't poor, not even close. They lived in the wealthy town of Elstree, Hertfordshire, in a home shining with middle-class respectability. But young Simon learned early that money can't buy warmth. His mother, Julie Brett, had been a ballet dancer and socialite, the kind of woman who floated through rooms with elegance and grace. She was beautiful, admired, the type of mom other families envied. But to Simon, she felt distant, emotionally out of reach. Love, if it was there, was never said out loud. Affection was handed out like it was rare. She was there physically, but not in the ways a child truly needed. Years later, Simon admitted with painful honesty, "My mother loved me, but she never knew how to show it." His father, Eric Selig Philip Cowell, was even tougher to connect with. A strict music industry executive and estate agent, he measured life by achievements, not emotions. Discipline, hard work, results. That was his thing. Praise? Yeah, that wasn't part of his vocabulary. Simon could do well, and his dad would just nod. Simon could fail, and his dad would frown. But never, not once, did he hear the words, "I'm proud of you." Decades later, Simon confessed, his voice still heavy, "My father never said he was proud of me, even when I needed it the most." That silence became a scar he carried into every boardroom, every audition, every sleepless night. The boy who never heard, "Well done," turned into the man obsessed with proving his worth to a world that honestly didn't care. School wasn't any better. At Radlett Preparatory School and later Dover College, Simon was the troublemaker. Restless, rebellious, clashing with teachers who thought he was difficult instead of different. He wasn't dumb. He was just bored out of his mind. The system wanted him to fit in, but Simon, already invisible at home, refused to disappear at school too. He broke rules, skipped classes, and built a reputation as the kid nobody wanted to deal with. His classmates were remembered. Simon was overlooked. He barely scraped through, leaving with just one general certificate of education in English and sociology. No qualifications, no plan, and a crushing feeling that he had already failed. In a family where success was everything, Simon felt completely broke. By his late teens, rejection wasn't shocking anymore. It was normal. He tried random jobs. He drifted around. He watched friends move forward while he stayed stuck. Every door felt locked. Every opportunity led nowhere. The kid ignored at home, and school was now invisible to the whole world. Out of pity more than pride, his father pulled some strings and got him a job in the mailroom at EMI Music Publishing. The absolute bottom of the ladder in an industry obsessed with fame. Every morning, Simon Cowell, son of a music executive, carried coffee to producers who didn't even know his name. He sorted fan mail for stars filling arenas while he felt like he didn't even exist. "I was invisible in a world obsessed with the spotlight," he later said. And you can still hear the bitterness in that line. He tried to escape. One day, fed up and humiliated, he quit EMI, convinced he'd find something better. But the outside world was even colder. Doors slammed. Interviews led nowhere. Rent became impossible. Within months, broke and defeated, he crawled back to the same mailroom he swore he'd never return to. Yeah, that was rock bottom. But in that humiliation, something changed. Something dark and stubborn started growing. Late at night, after being ignored all day, Simon would lock himself in the bathroom and cry. Not just from failure, but from fear. The terrifying fear that this was it, that his life had already peaked at 22 and everything ahead would be a slow, invisible fade into nothing. Those tears didn't break him. They toughened him up. From neglect, he built resolve. From rejection, he learned defiance. The boy starving for love was turning into a man who would force the world to notice him, no matter the price. Simon Cowell's childhood wasn't some fairy tale. It was a pressure cooker. Every missing "I love you," every silent "I'm proud of you," every moment of being unseen became fuel. Fuel for an ambition so intense it almost looked ruthless. Fuel for a drive that would make him the most powerful man in television. But it also left deep scars that success could never fully heal. The boy crying in silence would grow into a man commanding stadiums, yet still feel invisible in his own quiet home. The child desperate for his father's approval would spend his whole life chasing validation from strangers, never fully believing it when it came. His childhood didn't make him strong. It made him hungry. And that hunger, born in the cold silence of a home that never said, "I love you," pushed him to heights most people only dream about. But it also made him lonelier than anyone could imagine. Humiliated but not broken, Simon returned to the EMI mailroom. Same desk. Same piles of unopened fan letters. Same producers walking past like he didn't exist. But this time, something was different. The tears were gone. The shame had turned into steel. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was watching, learning, studying. He observed everything. How records got picked, how artists were shaped, how fame was created and sold. He realized the music business wasn't just about talent. It was about timing, image, and understanding what people wanted before they even knew it themselves. The mailroom became his classroom, and every ignored day became a lesson in power. By the early 1980s, Simon had fought his way up to a junior A&R role. Not glamorous, but it was a start. Then in 1983, he made the boldest, craziest move of his life. He quit EMI and started his own label, ENS Music, later renamed Fanfare Records, with his boss Ellis Rich. For the first time ever, Simon Cowell felt seen. He wasn't just another employee anymore. He was the boss. Fanfare scored early success with novelty pop hits like So Macho by Sanita, climbing the UK charts and putting Simon on the map. Suddenly, he was throwing parties, networking with industry big shots, and tasting the addictive feeling of finally being somebody. The money rolled in fast. The flashy lifestyle followed. Expensive dinners, designer clothes, and a reputation as a young mogul on the rise. For a guy who spent his whole life invisible and craving approval, this felt unreal. He had finally stepped out of his father's shadow. He had finally proved, at least to himself, that he mattered. But empires built on hype crash just as fast as they blow up. You know what I mean. By the late 1980s, the market shifted big time. The novelty pop sound that had made Fanfare successful started feeling old and played out. The hits dried up. Acts that once topped charts now couldn't even get radio play. Distribution deals fell through. Revenue straight up disappeared. And Simon, barely 30 years old, watched in shock and horror as the empire he thought he was building fell apart into total rubble. By 1989, Fanfare Records was dead. Not struggling, dead. Offices abandoned, contracts worthless, and Simon Cowell was left with nothing but crushing debts and a reputation as a failure. Friends disappeared. Phone calls went unanswered. Investors who once smiled and shook his hand now dodged him in hallways. The boy who had been invisible his entire childhood had briefly become visible and then, in the cruelest twist, became invisible again. The financial collapse was brutal, But the emotional collapse hit even harder. Simon had no home, no income, no prospects. At 30 years old, he was forced to move back into his parents' house in Hertfordshire, back into the same childhood bedroom where he had once cried himself to sleep, feeling unloved and unseen. Except now it felt way worse. Now he wasn't just the disappointment who couldn't make his father proud. He was the failure who had tried and lost everything. The humiliation was suffocating. Every morning waking up in that room felt like a prison sentence, a constant reminder that he had aimed for the stars and landed face first in the dirt. That time nearly broke me, Simon later admitted. And those who knew him back then say that admission doesn't even come close to the full weight of his despair. He stopped returning calls. He avoided old colleagues. Some days he barely left his room. The world had given him a glimpse of success, then snatched it away with ruthless efficiency. But here's the thing about Simon Cowell. Rejection had been his teacher since childhood, and every time life knocked him down, something stubborn inside him just refused to stay there. Slowly, painfully, he began to rebuild. He took meetings he didn't even want to take. He pitched ideas to people who had already written him off. He swallowed his pride and accepted small consulting gigs. Anything just to survive, man. The industry whispered that he was finished, washed up before he had even really begun. But Simon had learned something in the wreckage of fanfare. He had learned that chasing critical respect was a fool's game. Critics didn't buy records. Ordinary people did. Soccer moms, teenagers, office workers. If you wanted to win, you didn't aim for the tastemakers. You aimed for the masses. It was a lesson born out of failure, humiliation, and desperation. But it would become the philosophy that changed everything. The collapse of fanfare records didn't end Simon Cowell. It reforged him. The boy who had been invisible, the young man who had tasted success and lost it, was turning into something else completely, someone tougher, sharper, more dangerous. He didn't know it yet, but the bankruptcy, the shame, the nights staring at the ceiling of his childhood bedroom, all of it was preparing him for the comeback of a lifetime. Not just survival, but domination. The music industry had chewed him up and spit him out. But Simon Cowell wasn't done. Not even close. The man who would one day sit behind a desk and decide the fates of millions was still crawling through the wreckage, learning the one lesson that would define his empire. Never, ever give up, even when the world tells you you're finished. The early 1990s were not kind to Simon Cowell. He was a man in his 30s, living in his parents' house, carrying the stain of bankruptcy on his name. The industry didn't forget failures. It whispered about them in boardrooms and laughed about them at parties. Simon wasn't just starting over. He was starting from below zero. But desperation has a way of sharpening focus. And Simon, humiliated and broke, made a decision that would change everything. He stopped chasing respect and started chasing results. In 1989, even before fanfare fully collapsed, Simon had begun working as a consultant for BMG Records. It wasn't glamorous. He wasn't the boss anymore. He was just another employee grinding through meetings, pitching ideas, and fighting for scraps. But he studied the game differently now. He watched what sold, not what critics praised. He tracked chart positions, radio play, and sales figures with obsessive precision. And he noticed something the tastemakers missed. Ordinary people didn't want experimental art. They wanted catchy hooks, familiar melodies, and stars they could believe in. The gap between what critics celebrated and what the public actually bought was massive, and Simon decided to live in that gap. Throughout the 1990s, Simon signed acts that made industry insiders roll their eyes. Novelty groups, manufactured pop bands, covers of old songs repackaged for new audiences, acts like Robson and Jerome, a duo of TV actors who released an album of classic ballads that the music press mocked mercilessly. Yet it sold over 2 million copies and became the best-selling album of 1995 in the UK. Then came Westlife. 5 Irish boys put together into a squeaky clean boy band that critics dismissed as corporate and soulless. But their debut single went straight to #1. Then their second, then their third. 14 #1 singles in the UK. Over 55 million records sold worldwide. The critics hated them. The public couldn't get enough. Simon didn't care about the sneers. Every time a journalist called his work cheap or manufactured, he checked the sales figures and smiled. He was making millions while the tastemakers struggled to stay relevant. "I learned the hard way," Simon admitted years later. "You sell records first, earn respect later. But it wasn't just about the money. Every success was proof. Proof that the boy dismissed at school was smarter than the teachers who ignored him. Proof that the son who never heard, "I'm proud of you," was worth something after all. Proof that the man who lost everything at 30 could claw his way back. Still, the victories felt empty. Simon was winning, but he was alone. The relentless schedule left no room for relationships. The industry that now needed him still didn't respect him. And late at night, in expensive hotel rooms paid for by hit records, Simon would lie awake haunted by the same fear that had paralyzed him in his parents' house. What if I lose it all again? There were nights I lay awake, convinced I would lose everything again, he confessed. The trauma of fanfare never fully healed. Success felt fragile, temporary, like something that could disappear in a second. But then in 2001, everything changed. A British television producer named Simon Fuller approached BMG with a bold, crazy idea. A talent competition where the public, not industry executives, would decide who became a star. It would be called Pop Idol, and they wanted Simon Cowell as a judge. Simon hesitated. Television was uncharted territory. What if he failed again? What if the public rejected him the way the industry had? But desperation had taught him one powerful lesson. Fortune favors the bold. So Simon said yes. And when the cameras turned on, something incredible happened. The public didn't want polite judges giving soft, gentle criticism. They wanted honesty. And Simon Cowell, the man who had spent a lifetime being dismissed, ignored, and rejected, delivered honesty with surgical precision. "You sound like a cat being strangled." That was absolutely dreadful. I have heard better singing in the shower. The press called him cruel. Industry insiders called him a villain. But the ratings were insane. Pop Idol became a phenomenon, and Simon Cowell, the man who had been invisible his entire childhood, suddenly became impossible to ignore. The comeback was complete. The failed entrepreneur from the mailroom had become the most talked about figure on British television. But this was just the beginning. America was calling, and Simon Cowell was about to become the most powerful man in entertainment. In 2002, Simon Cowell crossed the Atlantic. Pop Idol had been a smash hit in the UK, but Britain was a small market. America was the real prize, the biggest entertainment economy in the world, where success meant global domination. When American Idol launched on Fox in June 2002, industry insiders were skeptical. A singing competition on American television? It would never work. They were spectacularly wrong. American Idol didn't just work. It blew up, like seriously blew up. Within just weeks, it became the highest-rated show on American television. By the end of its very first season, more than 23 million viewers tuned in to watch Kelly Clarkson get crowned the winner. Simon Cowell, that British judge with the savage tongue and the raised eyebrow, turned into a household name overnight. What made Simon so magnetic wasn't just him being mean. It was his honesty in a world drowning in fake praise and sugarcoating. For years, talent shows had been polite, supportive, safe. Judges smiled and said, "Good effort." Even when contestants were objectively terrible, Simon smashed that whole illusion. "You have no talent whatsoever." That was like having my ears assaulted. If you had been singing like this 2,000 years ago, people would have stoned you. America had never seen anything like it, and people were shook. The press labeled him the meanest man on television. Parents wrote furious letters. Contestants cried on stage. But the audience? They were obsessed. They didn't tune in despite Simon's harshness. They tuned in because of it. In a culture full of participation trophies and empty hype, Simon's brutal honesty felt like a breath of fresh air, no cap. And under all those savage comments was something deeper. Real judgment. Discernment. Simon didn't just tear people down for fun. He spotted real talent when he saw it. Kelly Clarkson, Carrie Underwood, Jennifer Hudson, Doree. These weren't accidents or lucky breaks. Simon had spent 2 decades in the music industry learning how to tell the difference between someone who could sing and someone who could actually sell. And when he said yes, it meant something. It hit different. By the mid-2000s, Simon Cowell wasn't just some TV judge anymore. He was a full-blown cultural phenomenon. His face was everywhere, on magazine covers, talk shows, headlines. His quotes turned into memes. Saturday Night Live parodied him. The Simpsons featured him. He was somehow the most loved and most hated man on television at the same time. And all the controversy? It just made him more powerful. But Simon wasn't satisfied with American Idol. In 2004, he launched The X Factor in the UK, a show he created and owned, giving him total creative control. Unlike Idol, which focused only on solo singers, The X Factor welcomed groups, older contestants, and performers the industry had already rejected. It was American Idol on steroids, bigger, louder, crazier. The X Factor became an instant hit, launching the careers of Leona Lewis, One Direction, Little Mix, and Fifth Harmony. Simon had perfected the formula. Find raw talent, package it perfectly, and let the public fall in love. He wasn't just discovering stars anymore. He was manufacturing them with assembly line efficiency, like a boss. Then came the Got Talent franchise. Launched in 2006 with Britain's Got Talent, the show went beyond singers. Dancers, magicians, comedians, dog trainers, literally anyone with a talent could show up. It was a wider net, catching talent that traditional music shows never even looked at. Susan Boyle, the Scottish church volunteer who stunned the world with I Dreamed a Dream, became a global sensation overnight. Her audition video became the most watched YouTube clip of 2009. Got Talent spread like wildfire. America's Got Talent. Asia's Got Talent. Africa's Got Talent. Arab's Got Talent. At its peak, more than 70 countries had their own versions. Simon Cowell's formats were airing in over 100 nations, reaching an estimated 600 million viewers around the world. He had built a television empire the world had never seen before. It was insane. And the money? Yeah, it followed hard. By 2010, Simon's production company, Psycho Entertainment, was making hundreds of millions in revenue every year. His personal net worth shot past $500 million. He owned mansions in Los Angeles, London, and Barbados. His garage was packed with supercars, Bugattis, Ferraris, Rolls-Royces. He dated models and actresses, flew on private jets, and lived the kind of life that once felt impossible for the invisible boy from the mailroom. But power, Simon was learning, comes with a brutal price. The schedule was non-stop and exhausting. Filming American Idol, The X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, and America's Got Talent meant months of insane 18-hour days. Auditions in 5 cities. Live shows every week. Strategy meetings until midnight. Pressure to keep ratings high, to keep the shows fresh, to stay ahead of the competition. It was suffocating. And then the public started turning on him. The same audiences who once loved his honesty now called him a bully. Think pieces accused him of exploiting vulnerable contestants. Activists protested outside studios. Even got death threats. Contestants who didn't make it blamed Simon for crushing their dreams, like he owed them fame. I knew people hated me, Simon admitted years later. But I also knew I couldn't pretend to be someone I wasn't. Behind the cameras, the loneliness hit hard. Friends drifted away, unable to keep up with his crazy schedule. Relationships fell apart under the weight of his obsession with work. The boy who had grown up starved of affection became a man starved of connection. He confessed in a rare, vulnerable moment. Even in the middle of filming, surrounded by lights and applause, I often felt completely alone. The irony was brutal. Simon Cowell had spent his entire life fighting to be seen, to matter, to make the world recognize him. And now, at the height of his power, sitting in front of millions every week, he had never felt more invisible. The empire was complete, but the man inside it was falling apart. By 2013, Simon Cowell had everything the world said mattered. Fame, money, power. His empire stretched across continents. His net worth had climbed past $300 million. He looked untouchable, or so he thought. Then in July 2013, the news dropped, and Simon's carefully built world exploded. Lauren Silverman, the wife of one of his close friends, real estate mogul Andrew Silverman, was pregnant, and Simon Cowell was the father. This wasn't just gossip. It was a full-on nuclear scandal. The tabloids went crazy with headlines screaming betrayal. Every detail was dissected, analyzed, and used against him. Simon, the man who built a career judging others, suddenly found himself judged by millions. And the verdict was savage. Andrew Silverman filed for divorce, citing adultery and naming Simon as a correspondent. Friends quietly distanced themselves. Industry colleagues whispered behind his back. The man who always controlled the narrative was now trapped in one he couldn't escape. It was not something I'm proud of, Simon admitted later, his voice stripped of its usual confidence. There were no excuses, no spin, just regret. For a man obsessed with control, this was the most powerless moment of his life. The media storm was relentless. Paparazzi camped outside his homes. Every move was watched. Late-night shows turned him into a joke. The internet, always hungry for drama, ripped him apart. The judge had become the judged, and the court of public opinion showed zero mercy. But beneath the chaos, something unexpected was happening. Simon wasn't scared of the headlines or lawsuits. He was scared of becoming a father. At 54, he had spent his entire adult life avoiding commitment. He dated stunning women, but never stayed. He built empires, but never a family. Fatherhood was the one thing he never prepared for. "I didn't think I wanted children," he told a friend. "I thought I'd be terrible at it." On February 14, 2014, Valentine's Day, Eric Philip Cowell was born in New York City, named after Simon's father, the man who had never said, "I'm proud of you." The baby arrived in the middle of scandal and judgment. And then Simon held his son for the first time. The cameras caught his smile, but they couldn't capture what changed inside him. All the noise, the drama, the betrayal, the shame, it faded away. In that hospital room, holding a fragile life that depended on him, Simon felt something he hadn't felt since childhood. Unconditional love. "Everything changed," he said later. And everyone who knew him saw it instantly. The transformation wasn't slow. It was immediate and total. The man who once measured life in ratings and money now centered everything around bedtime stories and diaper changes. He canceled meetings to hear Eric's first words. He rearranged filming schedules for bath time. The boardroom king became a regular in the nursery, swapping contracts for lullabies and harsh critiques for crawling lessons. "My priorities flipped completely," Simon admitted. "My world wasn't about ratings or contracts anymore. It was all about him." Friends were shocked by the change. Simon, the workaholic who used to flex about 18-hour days, now bounced from sets early just to read bedtime stories. Simon, who dodged commitment for 54 years, now couldn't stop talking about Lego towers and favorite cartoons. The sharp edges chilled out. The harshness turned into patience. Fatherhood straight up saved him. One close associate said he was already heading down a dark road even before the scandal. Eric gave him a reason to stop, to heal, to start over. But redemption doesn't just wipe out consequences. The scandal left scars that even fatherhood couldn't fix. Friendships were wrecked, some forever. Andrew Silverman, once a close friend, was now distant. Trust, once broken, rarely comes back. And Simon carried the guilt like a shadow, always there, even in the brightest moments with Eric. "I lost friends. I lost trust," Simon admitted. "But I gained something I never knew I needed." It wasn't some epic escape from consequences. It was a reckoning, a miracle wrapped in controversy, a gift rising from the ashes. To the tabloids, the scandal faded with time, replaced by fresh drama and newer gossip. But to Simon, it stayed a defining chapter. The moment he realized power couldn't protect him from mistakes, and that real change usually comes from your biggest failures. Eric didn't erase the scandal, but he gave it meaning. The fire that almost destroyed Simon became the pressure that shaped a different man. Less arrogant, more open, more real. And for the first time in his life, Simon Cowell understood something his father never taught him. That the true measure of a man isn't what he builds, but who he loves. August 8, 2020, Malibu, California. Simon Cowell was testing a new electric bike in the courtyard of his $24 million oceanfront house. It was a Saturday afternoon. The sun was out. Eric, now 6 years old, was playing close by. Lauren was inside. It should have been a perfect day. Then, in one single second, everything flipped. The bike was powerful, way too powerful. Simon wasn't ready for the torque. He hit the throttle, and the machine shot forward like crazy. Before he could even react, he was airborne. Then he hit the ground, and all that followed was pure screaming pain. His back didn't crack or bruise, it shattered. Multiple fractures in his spine, vertebrae crushed, nerves damaged. The hit was so brutal that paramedics later said he was lucky to still be alive. One wrong move, one slightly different angle, and Simon Cowell could have been paralyzed or dead. "I came within a minute of not making it," Simon later said, his voice empty, and he meant it literally. By the time the ambulance arrived, his body was going into shock, his blood pressure dropping fast. Lauren held Eric back, shielding him from seeing his father broken and bleeding on the ground. The surgery lasted 6 hours. 6 brutal hours of doctors carefully placing a steel rod into Simon's spine, fusing vertebrae, trying to repair what the fall had destroyed. When he woke up, the pain was beyond anything he'd ever known. Every breath felt like fire. Every attempt to move sent shocks through his body. The pain was worse than anything I'd ever endured, Simon admitted later. And this was a man who had survived humiliation, bankruptcy, and scandal. But physical pain hits different. It doesn't let you escape. It's constant, relentless, every second reminding you how fragile you really are. For weeks, Simon couldn't walk. He couldn't sit without help. He couldn't even lift a glass of water. The man who once controlled stages and boardrooms, who built a $600 million empire through pure will, was suddenly helpless. Nurses helped him to the bathroom. Physical therapists taught him how to stand again. Every tiny win, shifting in bed, taking 3 steps, standing for 10 seconds, felt massive. But the physical pain wasn't the worst part. The worst part was fear. Fear he might never recover. Fear his spine, now held together with metal and prayers, could fail. Fear one wrong move could leave him paralyzed. And worst of all, the fear Eric might grow up without a father. I thought of Eric, and I knew I had to fight, Simon later confessed, his voice shaking. That wasn't bravado. That was raw fear. The image of his 6-year-old son growing up alone haunted every painful step. Eric became his biggest healer. The little boy sat by his bedside, holding his hand, talking about Lego builds and cartoons. When Simon stood for the first time, Eric cheered like his dad had just won an Oscar. Those moments, small and simple but priceless, gave Simon strength to push through. Months passed. Slowly, painfully, Simon learned to walk again. First with a walker, then a cane, then finally alone. But recovery was never complete. His spine would never be the same. Mornings came with stiffness and pain. Sitting too long became impossible. The steel rod in his back stayed as a reminder. You're not invincible. And just when Simon was starting to feel stronger, life hit again. January 2022, another electric bike, another crash. This time near his Malibu home, he lost control. The injuries were less severe. A broken arm, bruises, cuts. But mentally, it hit harder. Getting knocked down once was tragedy. Twice felt like punishment. Headlines clowned him. Simon Cowell crashes again. Late-night hosts made jokes. Social media flooded with memes. The man who once seemed untouchable was now a punchline. But the worst part wasn't embarrassment. It was the realization he wasn't invincible. That control, the thing he chased his whole life, was just an illusion. No money, fame, or power could protect him from one mistake. It changed me in every way, Simon admitted later. The accidents became a mirror, forcing him to face who he'd become. A man working too much, sleeping too little, moving non-stop, believing slowing down meant failure. The accidents didn't just break his body. They shattered his denial. Simon began slowing down. He cut back on TV, spent more time with Eric and Lauren, started therapy not to return to the grind, but just to move without pain. He stopped chasing the next deal, the next show, the next win. For the first time in his life, Simon Cowell stopped running. The world saw a man healing. But those close to him saw something deeper. A man who finally understood survival isn't about power. It's about being present. That real moments aren't in meetings or on stage, but in quiet mornings with your kid, teaching him to ride safely, holding him close, being grateful for another day. The accidents left scars, but they also saved him, because they taught him what childhood, bankruptcy, and success never did. That life is brutally fragile. And real strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, even when your body screams, and choosing a different way to live. Simon Cowell survived bankruptcy, scandal, and 2 near-fatal accidents. But nothing prepared him for the losses that would break him in ways pain never could. In July 2015, just as he was adjusting to being a father, his mother, Julie Brett, died at 89. She lived a long, elegant life. A former ballet dancer who carried grace even as age slowed her. To the world, it seemed natural, a peaceful ending. To Simon, it was crushing. Julie had been his anchor during a chaotic childhood, the quiet witness to his rebellion, the one person whose approval he always wanted, even if she rarely said it. When she passed, Simon was producing The X Factor. Cameras, deadlines, contestants, none of it mattered. He stepped away, canceling work, retreating into grief that stripped away his armor. "Losing my mom was the hardest thing I've ever gone through," Simon said softly. The silence after she was gone was unbearable, and the pain was deeper because of an older wound that had never fully healed. In 1999, way before the global fame and all that, Simon had already buried his father, Eric Selig Philip Cowell. The strict, distant guy who never once said, "I'm proud of you," passed away before he could see his son go from broke to a total household name. Simon carried that regret for years, man. The heavy feeling that the one person whose approval he chased the hardest never got to see the success that hunger had built. Now, with his mother gone too, Simon felt like the last thread tying him to his roots had snapped. The boy who once felt invisible was now an orphan, and the silence in his life just got louder and louder. Friends later said how fragile he looked during those months. The unshakable mogul, reduced to silence. But Julie's passing forced something else to rise up. Reflection. Simon started talking more about family, about showing up, about holding on to moments that fame usually steals. People who worked with him noticed a new patience, a softer side that rarely showed before. And then, just when the wound was starting to close, tragedy hit again. This time in a way that made zero sense. September 2024, Buenos Aires, Argentina. Liam Payne, only 31, fell from a hotel balcony and died. The news hit Simon like a truck, no joke. Liam wasn't just another contestant. He wasn't just another name on a long list of stars Simon had discovered. He was family. The kid Simon first met at 16, standing nervously under bright stage lights, carrying a voice full of unstoppable promise. The boy Simon put into one direction. The band he carefully built in 2010, a group that became a worldwide phenomenon and shaped an entire generation. Simon remembered that audition like it was yesterday. The nervous laugh, the spark of determination in Liam's eyes. One single yes unlocked a journey that looked like it would last decades. To see that light gone so suddenly, Simon later said, felt like losing a son. Too young, too soon, too cruel, he whispered to a close friend. And honestly, that was the truth. The world mourned together. Cities lit up with candlelight vigils. Fans flooded social media with lyrics, photos, and broken messages of disbelief. But Simon's mornings were lonely. Projects stopped. Cameras shut off. The man who once ruled global prime time chose silence instead. His nights weren't filled with bright studios anymore, but quiet hours beside Eric. Friends noticed he held his son tighter, like every laugh. Every bedtime story carried something sacred. It was like he was trying to give Eric every moment Liam would never get, one friend recalled. In private, Simon went back to the start. He replayed old, grainy audition tapes of Liam and the boys, so young, so wild with hope. What once felt nostalgic turned into a ritual of grief. Every laugh on tape felt like a stab. Every song like a ghost of what could have been. For the man who built careers and shaped culture, the helplessness was unbearable. He could build empires. He could create stars. But he couldn't rewrite this ending. Liam's death didn't just hurt Simon. It scarred him. It became a mirror he couldn't escape, showing the price of fame, how short life really is, and the brutal truth that even the brightest lights can go out without warning. And in that cold emptiness, Simon held tighter to what he still had. To Eric. To quiet moments. To the simple, priceless fact of being alive. By the time Simon reached his 60s, he had already survived a long list of scars, emotional, physical, and professional. But nothing prepared him for the cruelest one, the one he caused himself. For years, Simon had messed around with cosmetic treatments. Botox here, fillers there. He called it maintenance, a shield against aging. In an industry obsessed with youth, where cameras catch every wrinkle and tabloids tear apart every flaw, Simon felt that pressure squeezing him hard. At first, the changes were low-key, barely noticeable. A smoother forehead, fuller cheeks. He looked refreshed, polished, exactly what TV wanted. But as time passed and treatments stacked up, things changed. By 2021, fans and critics stared in shock at someone who didn't even look like Simon anymore. His expressive face seemed stiff, frozen. His famous smirk looked forced. His cheeks looked swollen. His face stretched and fake. Headlines went wild. What happened to Simon Cowell's face? Memes spread everywhere. The internet roasted every angle, every appearance. For Simon, the irony was savage. He had built an empire judging appearances, telling people they weren't good enough, polished enough, marketable enough. Now he was the one being judged, mocked, dragged. I went too far, he admitted later, his confidence stripped away. There was a moment I looked in the mirror and literally didn't recognize myself. That confession hit deeper than people realized. It wasn't just about looks. It was existential. For a man who fought his way from invisibility to everywhere, not recognizing his own face felt like losing himself completely. The emotional weight went way beyond vanity. Simon started stepping back from the spotlight. Fewer appearances, skipped tours, let others take the lead in shows he once dominated. Insiders said he looked exhausted, hollow. For the first time, he knew what it felt like to be the object, not the observer. The judge had become the judged, and the verdict was brutal. But from that humiliation came clarity. Simon shocked everyone. He decided to stop. No more Botox. No more fillers. No more chasing fake youth. Enough was enough. Let it age. Let it show. It wasn't just about looks. It was peace with himself. He didn't need to look invincible anymore. He needed to be real. When he came back, he wasn't hiding behind fake youth. He came back honest. Lines on his face. Gray in his hair. A slimmer body from discipline, not ego. Fans who once mocked him now saw something else. Humanity. I've stopped chasing youth, he said. I'd rather chase memories with Eric. The lesson was written on his face. And for once, he let it stay. In 2025, Simon Cowell stands at 65. Not the ruthless guy who once ruled Saturday nights, but someone transformed by survival, pain, and deep reflection. He still sits on the talent panel, but he's different. His harsh judgments turned into guidance. His sharp humor softened into warmth. The man people once feared now speaks with patience, knowing how fragile life really is. Every word carries pain. Every smile carries history. At home in his $24 million Beverly Hills mansion, health comes first. Mornings start with slow Pilates routines designed to protect the spine he fractured in 2020. One wrong move can bring back intense pain. The steel rod in his back is always there, a cold reminder his body will never be the same. His diet is strict now. Low sodium for blood pressure, high fiber for digestion, antioxidants for energy. Every meal is planned with doctors. Every bite feels like a choice between healing or hurting, a friend said. But the toughest battle is his eyesight. Years under harsh lights and trauma have weakened it. Glasses are always close. Dim rooms make him squint. For a man who built a career spotting hidden talent, losing vision feels like betrayal. He told friends the thought of not clearly seeing Eric's face one day scares him more than any headline ever did. Pain brings sleepless nights. Anxiety lingers. Fear of falling again. Fear of dependency. Fear time is running out. But every evening, all of that fades when he's with Eric. Bike rides along Malibu, slower now. Helmets always. Playing piano together. Bedtime stories, read with effort but full of love. These moments are his medicine. Every laugh feels like hope. Every story like a fight against time. Behind this quiet life, his empire still runs. Got Talent and X Factor keep generating massive income. His fortune sits above $600 million. His properties span the world. Mansions in Malibu and London. Supercars in the garage. Ferraris, Rolls-Royces, Aston Martins, a Bugatti. But most just sit there now. Even his jet barely flies. They remind him of a life that once rushed forward nonstop. Simon now talks about money with distance. He has written his will. Eric won't inherit the empire. Instead, the wealth will go to children's health, education, and scholarships. I don't want Eric to inherit money. I want him to inherit values. I want kids with nothing to get the chances I never had. He isn't just giving away money. He's redefining legacy. His appearance tells the same story. No more speculation. No more cosmetic obsession. Wrinkles. Gray hair. Real. Each mark shows survival. Each gray strand shows endurance. The struggle hasn't disappeared. Pain still hits. Vision still fades. Medication is constant. But he no longer hides. He turns weakness into gratitude. Survival into purpose. Simon Cowell's life isn't about perfect success. It's about falling, rising, breaking, healing. From an invisible mailroom boy to one of the most powerful men in television. From bankruptcy to a $600 million empire. From scandal to fatherhood. From near death to rebirth. He discovered stars and changed lives. But the greatest discovery he ever made was himself. The father behind the mogul. The human behind the legend. Today, his legacy isn't ratings. It's bedtime stories. Scholarships. Kindness. Grace. Maybe the real lesson is this. Power fades. Fame disappears. Health weakens. But love, humility, and purpose stay. What will you take from his journey? Slow down before life forces you to? Choose laughter over applause? Value presence over possessions? Share your thoughts below. Subscribe for more untold stories. And remember, the greatest legacy isn't empire. It's empathy. Because in every scar and every shadow, Simon Cowell proves the truth. The real measure of life isn't what you build. It's who you become. Come,